The injuries in MMA are no joke. Soldiers in wars may wear armor and have some distance from their enemies, but MMA fighters face each other up close, with no barriers. One perfectly timed punch or kick can cause severe injuries, broken bones, deep cuts, or even traumatic brain damage that can last a lifetime. Unlike a battlefield where medics and evacuation are sometimes possible, in the cage, the damage is immediate and brutal. The pace of an MMA fight is relentless. Fighters don't just throw a few punches and call it a day. They endure non-stop physical punishment for several rounds, each one pushing their bodies and minds to the absolute limit. This constant exposure to high-impact strikes increases the risk of chronic injuries, including concussions and long-term brain disorders like CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which has been compared to the brain damage seen in combat veterans. Another point to consider is the psychological toll. War veterans often struggle with PTSD, but MMA fighters also experience immense mental stress. The pressure to perform, fear of injury, and the violent nature of the sport can lead to anxiety, depression, and emotional burnout. Unlike soldiers, MMA fighters often have less institutional support to help them cope with these challenges. Additionally, the rules in war, while brutal, are defined by international laws that aim to limit unnecessary suffering, even if those laws aren't always followed. In MMA, although there are rules to protect fighters, the sport encourages physical domination and submission. The goal is often to break your opponent's will, pushing them to the edge both physically and mentally. This all-in combat can sometimes result in irreversible damage. MMA fighters are often subjected to intense training regimes that push their bodies to extremes. These training camps can last weeks or even months, with athletes undergoing grueling physical workouts, sparring sessions, and strict diets. The toll this takes on their bodies is immense, leaving them vulnerable to overuse injuries, chronic pain, and burnout even before they step into the cage. Unlike soldiers, who might have structured rest periods, fighters often feel pressured to maintain peak condition constantly, increasing the risk of long-term harm. Another layer of risk comes from weight cutting, a practice where fighters drastically reduce their body weight in a short period to qualify for a specific weight class. This can involve severe dehydration and starvation, putting enormous strain on the heart, kidneys, and brain. The dangers of weight cutting are often downplayed, but they can lead to life-threatening situations, including organ failure and even death. This kind of self-inflicted damage is unique to combat sports like MMA and adds to the overall risk fighters face. The financial pressures also can't be ignored. Unlike military personnel who receive salaries and benefits, many MMA fighters struggle to make a sustainable income, especially in the early stages of their careers. This economic stress can force them to take fights they aren't physically or mentally ready for, increasing their chances of injury. Moreover, the lack of long-term financial security means that many fighters continue competing well past the point where their bodies can handle it safely. Comparing MMA to war also highlights the difference in scale, but not necessarily the intensity of individual experiences. Wars involve thousands or millions of people, with widespread destruction and casualties. MMA is a one-on-one battle, but the intensity of that fight is concentrated on two individuals who put everything on the line for just a few minutes. The physical and mental demands in MMA are focused and relentless, sometimes exceeding what a soldier might endure in combat. One thing war veterans and MMA fighters do share is the camaraderie formed under extreme conditions. Both face dangers that few outside their worlds can understand, and both develop bonds forged through shared hardship. However, while soldiers often have a community and resources after combat to help them heal, MMA fighters frequently navigate recovery and life after fighting alone or with minimal support. Long-term health consequences for MMA fighters can be severe. Many suffer from repeated concussions, leading to memory loss, mood disorders, and even early-onset dementia. Brain injuries are a growing concern in combat sports, and research is ongoing to understand the full impact. Unfortunately, many fighters only realize the damage after their careers end, when symptoms become more apparent and harder to manage. In war, despite the destruction, there is often a sense of cause and purpose, a bigger picture that can give soldiers a framework for their suffering. In MMA, The fight is for personal glory, livelihood, or passion. The individual nature of the sport means that fighters must find their own meaning and motivation amid the violence and risk. Ultimately, MMA might be more dangerous than war in the sense that the punishment is concentrated, brutal, and unrelenting, all packed into a short time frame. The physical, mental, and emotional risks are immense and often underestimated by fans and even fighters themselves. So next time you watch an MMA fight, remember the hidden realities beneath the spectacle, the sacrifices, the risks, and the dangers that can sometimes surpass those found on the battlefield. It's a reminder that behind every punch and submission lies a story of courage, pain, and the harsh price paid for the sport they love.